You're sitting in traffic or you're driving to visit someone and it takes you 2 hours to get there, and when you finally arrive,
$20 or $30 later, the tolls and gas.
you discover that the place is just as dismal as the one you started from. And if it weren't for your family, friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, your boss, or your business partner, you wouldn't dream of coming here. These places are never visited by tourists. There is no attractive architecture, no cozy little nooks with cozy little cafes. And if you've been taking an interest in how we got here, you know exactly whose fault it is. No, it's not capitalism or socialism. So it's not Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, or Karl Marx. The destruction of the American small town, the depressing subdivisions, the trivialization and humiliation of our cities with metal and glass boxes, the demolition of entire historic neighborhoods. You know who did this to us and whose followers continue doing it. Yes, the million-dollar question, of course, is who is Robert Moses? He is definitely the villain in this case, right? The desolation, the filth, the tedium, the backed-up highways cutting through the urban fabric, the Mac mansions, the big-box stores, it's all him. He is the one to blame for all of this. Well, is he not? You'll recall that he, Robert Moses, was sort of polite in the beginning. Amiable, debonair. The Northern State Parkway was his first creation. The design included high-quality masonry, arched stone bridges, and lush landscaping, keeping up appearances. Look at this bridge. It's almost Roman in spirit, isn't it? Almost like, Ponte Sant'Angelo in Rome. Emperor Hadrian's masterpiece with the addition of those Baroque statues in the 17th century.
Robert Moses did not add Baroque statues. Actually, that would have been quaint, right? Like, you're driving down this highway and all of a sudden you see this. Like, wow. Well, you get the point. All that neoclassical and Baroque architectural beauty was just a psychological trick. A tool to get middle-class people to buy cars.
He made the road look like a park to hide the fact that he was putting out a feeler, a harbinger of further activities.
Good or bad, he was a man of vision. He thought it was solid.
Destinations, cities, architecture, neighborly relations, culture, history, none of it mattered.
Well, let me ask you this. Did he put a gun to anyone's head? Did he force anybody? Let me clarify this. If you're not from New York, you might not even know what the term parkway means in this state and some of the neighboring states, including the glorious state of New Jersey.
A parkway is an expressway on which only private cars and public transit buses are allowed. No commercial traffic, no delivery trucks of any kind, no service vehicles, not even those employed by the city. So if you're a trucker delivering, say, produce from a port or a local farm to a grocery store in Brooklyn, Queens, or Manhattan, and the shortest route is a parkway, tough luck. Go around. Take the expressway or take the local streets. The parkway is for ladies and gentlemen only. We're trying to keep out the rabble here. Through the kitchen with you. Some protests did occur. Robert Moses had declared war on all of the Long Island population. The Northern State was to run right through the heart of the Gold Coast, an area where the wealthy elite had been living peacefully, having a good time, visiting each other in their luxurious mansions, throwing balls and soirees, and pretending to pay taxes. Robert had the support of the state's governor, Al Smith, who was a man of the people who loathed the elite. He was born at 174th South Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. He was the son of Italian and German immigrants. Nonetheless, At least one of those Gold Coast folks succeeded in negotiating a deal. Otto Kahn had a mansion in the area. When the Parkway threatened to bisect his private golf course, he donated $10,000 to the Park Commission for surveys. Magically, those surveys discovered a new route that curved the Parkway 5 or 6 miles south, completely sparing Kahn's estate. Now, this shift south pushed the Parkway right through the middle of productive farmland. James Roth was a farmer who had spent years clearing a 94-acre lot by hand.
Robert Moses decided that his parkway had to go right through the center of it. Roth pleaded with Moses to move it like 400 feet south, not miles, just 400 feet. Move that route south, please.
To spare his livelihood.
Robert Moses refused to budge an inch. He condemned the land, split the farm in two, and Roth never recovered.
Now, farming on Long Island was a big deal. A city needs to eat. While the Hudson Valley and western New York provided the bulk of the wheat, Long Island specialized in perishables: potatoes, cauliflower, cabbage, duck. Because it was so close to Manhattan and Brooklyn, fresh produce could get to the city markets via wagon and rail faster than any other region.
So now the perishables had to be delivered from other places further away, therefore more expensive. Do you think groceries are expensive these days?
Today's Long Island farming is mostly limited to the luxury boutique type. It exists primarily on the East End. It is no longer the city's pantry. The urban middle class, folks who owned cars, applauded. I mean, middle class people are people, just like the rich and the poor. We hardly ever think things through. A bit of flattery, a bit of a boost to our ego, a promise of instant gratification, and we'll buy anything or into anything.
Doesn't this line up perfectly with how people generally are? Or do we need a refresher course on original sin? Many people, including church-going Christians, really, they have no idea what original sin is. It's like, is it something about Adam and Eve? Something to do with the birds and the bees? The birds and the bees. The Lord explicitly told them to multiply way before they started eyeing that fruit. How else would you expect them to multiply? Like what? Binary fission? Seriously, original sin has nothing to do with the birds and the bees.
But it has everything to do with I want this now, I want it on my terms, and to hell with the consequences to anyone else. You see, the voiture particulière, a French phrase meaning my own carriage and a pair of horses, it's supposed to make you feel like a French aristocrat or an English lord. Buy a car and you'll feel lordly, master of your own destiny and some others. Except driving in a busy, congested city might actually take away from the experience. Now, these people would have an opportunity to leave the city on weekends after working long hours the entire week, get away from the crowd, reunite with beautiful nature in the manicured version of the countryside. That's what English lords have been doing for centuries, and now we're gonna do it too. We're going to be exactly like those English lords. Mingling with the rabble is beneath us, who we deserve better. Hello, nature. I'm not saying everyone thought along those lines, but the sentiment must have been one of the principal factors that put middle-class New Yorkers firmly in Robert Moses' camp. He wanted it, they wanted it. The interests were, for the moment, aligned. Well, with a few exceptions, French aristocrats and English lords didn't drive themselves. They had chauffeurs. But that's a minor detail, and besides, driving is fun. Especially if the trip is less than an hour and there's no traffic. So let's have a picnic in Ronkonkoma. Kids, get in. My lady, please watch your step. Ready for an adventure? Here we go. Robert's next move was making himself the head of the Triborough Bridge Authority, an administrative heist of the century if there ever was one. By structuring the authority so that the toll revenue from the bridge stayed with the authority and wasn't funneled back to the city, he created a sort of a sovereign state with its own budget, independent of the federal government, with the state and city politicians pretty much in his pocket. He no longer needed to persuade anyone to give him money. He could just build using the eminent domain clause to plow through neighborhoods at will. The rustic stonework of the Northern State was immediately abandoned for the utilitarian style, which is to say ugly, brutal, and hostile to neighborhoods and humans. No pedestrians, no streetcars, no trains. That was and is the Triborough Bridge, a series of bridges actually connecting three boroughs, all for the sake of the American middle class, who could now view themselves as ladies and gentlemen of yore.
The world was their oyster, especially in Oyster Bay. Building that series of bridges required the demolition of thousands of buildings in Astoria and Harlem, most of them Queen Anne and Romanesque residential blocks.
Yes, we could view Robert Moses as a villain. He lured us all into this tedious car-centric culture. This is all his fault. The incessant monthly payments, the ridiculous inflation, the oil crises, the housing crises, all of it.
But hang on a second. To the best of my knowledge, Robert Moses never once, not once, visited, Sweden, to pick a country at random. Sweden is rumored to have the best public transportation system in the world. No, really, it is state of the art. Wherever you are in Sweden, town, countryside, it's all the same. Getting from point A to point B by streetcar, train, or bus is in fact a joyful experience. Their public transport is highly comfortable and amazingly efficient, and yet, they have traffic jams. Traffic jams in Sweden. Why? Is that Robert's fault too?
In the 50s and 60s, the duo in charge, Mayer and Markelius, demolished hundreds of 18th and 19th century buildings in central Stockholm to build Hötorgssity, a cluster of 5 modernist skyscrapers and wide transit corridors. They viewed the old, winding streets as unhealthy and inefficient, much like Robert viewed the Bronx. Robert had authority, he was a dictator, a czar, in New York. He made a single sortie to New Orleans, where his project effectively turned that historic city into a dump. I should make a video about New Orleans. It had so much potential, all that culture, 4 opera theaters, all that. But what about Chicago? The first integrated highway in that city sliced through the west side, specifically targeting the Greek and Italian immigrant neighborhoods. Robert Moses had nothing to do with it. St. Louis, carving I-70 directly through the historic north side, thousands of red brick Italianate and Victorian homes, the very soul of St. Louis leveled. It turned a dense, walkable city into a series of parking lots and highway ramps. Robert Moses? Nope. California. The wreckage there, the soulless highways, the fake architecture of glass and concrete boxes, the destruction of Bunker Hill, filled with magnificent Victorian and Queen Anne mansions, scraped down to the dirt to make way for office towers. Robert Moses? I don't think so.
He had followers, he had imitators everywhere.
Here's an annoying detail. Because this is a democratic country, those hotshots couldn't just go ahead and ruin our cities. They had to be enabled by the voters, by us. We allowed it. Some of us encouraged it. This is the old Boston City Hall that miraculously escaped demolition, and this is the new one. Was Robert Moses in charge of this project? Nope. In order to build this, they called it a monument to democracy. Now think about it. This is a monument to democracy. I see. Okay, so to build it, along with a 10-acre plaza, the city cleared over 1,000 buildings in Scully Square. This was once a vibrant entertainment district. When the last historic neighborhood in Boston, with narrow streets and row houses, things that are so valued and highly desirable now, so coveted and expensive because of that. When they demolished it, did Robert Moses personally swing the wrecking ball or drive the first bulldozer? No, of course not. The democratically elected officials did it, elected by us. Some say he was a hypocrite and a racist. Those cute stone bridges over the Northern State, they were designed with low clearances to keep low-class buses out, using architectural form as a weapon of social and, some say, racial division.
Folks who did not own cars were not welcome.
As if every white family in the 1920s owned a car. It may have been a racist move, but it was also a socio-economic move. Keep out the rabble, whatever their skin color. No fancy beaches for Ralph Cramden, a bus driver, or Ed Norton, a sewage worker, and their mawkish, submissive, unemancipated wives. Allow ladies and gentlemen to enjoy their outing without having to deal with semi-literate plebeians. Good people are trying to enjoy nature in peace. Then came the Belt. The Belt Parkway opened in 1940. It effectively cut off Brooklyn from the water. Coney Island Creek had to be cleaned up anyway, but preservation, even of geography, was not on Robert's priorities list, so they just filled it. Coney Island was an actual barrier island. At the turn of the 20th century, it featured excellent beaches, as it does today. Some pretty impressive hotels, a huge and famous amusement park mentioned in classic American literature, notably by O. Henry, and was connected to Brooklyn by a whole bunch of bridges with walkways and streetcar lines. They ripped out the streetcar lines, took down the bridges, effectively making good old Coney a peninsula rather than an island. The subway lines running across that artificial tumbleau were probably put in against Robert's wishes. Well, you can't have everything. Somehow it turned folks away, and the world-famous amusement park became a dump and continued to be a dump for a long time. There's been some improvements lately, not very impressive.
But even before that, Robert Moses had this terrific idea. Connect the tip of Manhattan with Red Hook in Brooklyn. Build a bridge.
It wasn't a bad idea in principle.
But because it's Robert Moses, of course, there was the usual thing, purpose and scale. So no trains, private cars only, no pedestrians, no bikes.
Suddenly a large portion of Greenwich Village, the neighborhood where New Yorkers and specifically Bohemians had been hanging out, having a good time for over a century, it was to be demolished along with all of Battery Park. Robert did not foresee any problems, and then a miracle happened. Whatever you may think of our 32nd president and his policies, the fellow did have good taste. And, curiously enough, he was a New Yorker, a Brooklynite, no less. That's right. Spent much of his childhood and adolescence walking up and down, Henry Street in Brooklyn Heights. This was before the government started the practice of landmarking buildings, so the president couldn't just go ahead and landmark every damn park, house, church, synagogue, and municipal building that Moses was planning to take down. There had to be some other way. FDR devised a plan. It was as brilliant as it was humorous. Again, whatever you may think of FDR, he did have a great sense of humor. He enlisted the Navy's help. Well, the War Department, but mostly the Navy. He asked them to find an excuse, however idiotic, to keep Moses from constructing that fucking bridge. The Navy saluted the commander-in-chief, boarded a harbor vessel, and sailed up and down the Narrows, the Hudson, and the East River. They took in the sights, had coffee under the Brooklyn Bridge, played a few card games, smoked a few cigars, and put together a report. I'm pretty sure they had a lot of fun putting it together.
According to this report, if a bridge connecting the tip of Manhattan with Red Hook was damaged by enemy bombing, it would block access to the East River for Navy ships, which was unacceptable from the military point of view.
It sounded like a joke. It was a joke. But it allowed the president to say to Robert,
I'm sorry. I wish I could help you, but you know, those Navy guys. Moses was furious, of course. Later on, when Roosevelt's successors, Truman and Eisenhower, turned out to be of the same mind as the celebrated Brooklynite, he constructed a tunnel instead. And later on, to save face, he claimed that that had been his plan all along.
and then the gloves came off. The Cross-Bronx Expressway sliced through the East Tremont neighborhood. Thousands of Art Deco and Beaux-Arts apartment buildings, human-scale, detailed masonry structures that provided high-density, high-quality living, were suddenly gone. Roughly 60,000 people were forced out, half of them middle-class Jews, which made folks suspect that Moses, of German-Jewish background, was an anti-Semite. A racist and an anti-Semite. I don't think so. He simply didn't care. Then came the West Side Improvement. It essentially buried the Hudson River shoreline under a massive concrete slab, cutting off the brownstone and neoclassical rows of the Upper West Side from the water. The slum clearance destroyed Juan Hill, a vibrant neighborhood of Italianate tenements and community spaces. Those were replaced by brick boxes and later brick, glass, and concrete slabs. Fake architecture that completely destroyed the street life of the area. Lincoln Center, specifically the Metropolitan Opera House, is the one saving grace. It's so memorable and tasteful, on the outside anyway, that one would suspect it was a fluke. It respects the architecture canon, it's harmonious, it tells you the moment you glance at it, this is a place where opera is performed on a regular basis, as opposed to.
Some years ago, I dropped by this pizza place, and the owner and I got to talking.
He makes great pizza even though he's not Italian, which in Brooklyn is, well, commonplace. In Brooklyn, school children know how to make good pizza. DMV employees can make good pizza when pressed.
He asked me what kind of car I drove. At that moment, I didn't have a car, mostly because I didn't need one, and this completely stunned him. He asked me how I got around. Now, this in turn surprised me. I pointed out to him that there was a perfectly serviceable subway station literally next door to his pizza parlor. The New York subway system works around the clock. Weekends, holidays, Christmas, you name it. There are also buses, and if push comes to shove, you can summon a cab. If you don't need to travel anywhere outside the 5 boroughs, owning a car is in fact an unnecessary expense in many cases. If you're hell-bent on driving out to the countryside on the weekend, you can always rent something. Anyway, it got me thinking, so I conducted an experiment. This was back when legacy TV was still a thing, and prime time was a term that actually meant something. Good riddance, if you ask me. I armed myself with a notebook and spent some time sitting in front of the TV, counting car commercials, the ones that try to get you to buy a car, because everyone must have a car. So I did some math, and the results astonished me. An average American citizen buys a new car every 4 years, give or take. I multiplied the number of car commercials by the number of days and arrived at a staggering figure. It turned out that an average American was force-fed 55,000 car ads between purchases. No other product in history has ever been advertised with this kind of unbridled aggression. That's an understatement. I mean, nothing comes even close, like toothpaste, jeans, detergent, movie trailers, investment banking. Nothing, not by a long shot. 55,000 ads. That's not advertising, that's hypnosis. You must buy a car. It's your civic duty to buy a car. When I snap my fingers, you'll go and buy a car.
All those ads, it wasn't Robert Moses who made them.
Why is everyone so obsessed with cars? I get out of my building on Saturday morning like 11 a.m. on my purely residential block. No shops, no cafes, and there's a traffic jam. 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Where are those people going? Why aren't they sleeping with their wives or girlfriends? Why aren't they like having leisurely breakfast, enjoying each other's company, or feeding and entertaining their kids? Why can't they read a damn book or watch a TV show? What makes them get into their jalopies and drive on a Saturday, no less? How did Robert Moses, GM, and Goodyear, to name just three of the perpetrators, manage to seduce almost the entire population of these United States and the rest of the world into this jalopy-centric culture? I can think of a number of reasons. The most important one, status, or prestige, whatever. Voiture particulière. Sounds musical, doesn't it? Voiture particulière. It goes back many centuries. I think only the upper class, like the nobility, the aristocracy, could afford to keep this voiture particulière. At the end of the 19th century, this segued into, well, no, it didn't. It stayed the same, except the horses were replaced by the internal combustion engine. Do you want to feel important? Upper class? A person of merit? Lordly? Get a car. Reason number two, the mobile citadel illusion. Going faster than a human or a horse creates a sense of detachment from external dangers. You have your own mobile citadel. Others are exposed to all kinds of danger. You are not. Then there's the machinery mastery thrill. Look at this big thing, and I control it. And it does exactly what I tell it to do. I know it's childish, but there it is. There are other reasons, just as silly and impractical, especially in big cities. So before we start blaming Robert Moses, GM, and Michelin or Goodyear, why not look in the mirror? He came from an upper middle class family and was comfortable financially throughout his life. Personal wealth was never his goal. If you told him that he used his administrative power to, to line his own pockets, he wouldn't have been insulted, just surprised, like what? Are you serious? He was largely indifferent, even disdainful towards displays of wealth or luxury. He was not a socialite. He didn't care for fashionable circles and wasn't known for indulging in fine clothes, cars, villas, or art. His vision was, well, you could call it futuristic. He pictured this well-paved, endless highway from horizon to horizon, and private cars zooming up and down this highway driven by overjoyed car owners. This was to him the future, technologically advanced, sterile looking, and, in Robert's view, beautiful. So the man had no taste, huh? Well, I hasten to add this channel didn't exist back then, so there was nothing to set him straight about certain things. So he just plowed forward, and anything that stood in his way, he regarded as old-fashioned, superfluous, and ripe to be demolished. Beginning with, and this is important, rail tracks. He loathed rail tracks. Trains, streetcars, the mere sight of them drove him mad. Do you know who else hated rail tracks? And still does? Well, car manufacturers, naturally, for obvious reasons. The one company that's always mentioned as Robert's co-conspirator is General Motors. Ford, amazingly enough, stayed out of the campaigns, even though I'm pretty sure he was sympathetic. Well, there are only so many cars you can sell to the wealthy. There are only so many places you can reach by car in a country where 90% of passenger travel is executed by rail transport. Roads were generally anything but car friendly. I mean, dusty, unpaved, prone to flooding, and full of mud in the rainy season. This had to change. But in order to change it, all those hateful rail tracks had to be removed, and all those stupid streetcars scrapped. Yes? Okay, why? Other co-conspirators were, of course, Goodyear, some other rubber manufacturers, including Michelin. Yeah, that Michelin. Tires and restaurant reviews. There were others, other hotshots with vested interests, especially politicians who figured they deserved more than just an elected official's salary.
What is this? It's insulting.
And so, with Robert's blessings, car manufacturers purchased streetcar companies, tracks, rolling stock and all, promising to modernize them, following which the rolling stock would be dispatched to the junkyard and the tracks ripped out mercilessly all across the Republic, for the greater good, yes. It is said that in the year of our Lord 1920, with the exception of a 40-mile stretch somewhere in upstate New York, you could board a streetcar up in Maine and traveling and switching from one streetcar to the next, you would be able to reach Detroit. Wow. All that had to go. It wasn't modern enough for Robert Moses, and GM was happy to be rid of that kind of competition.
And we, the people, we agreed with Robert. This was progress.
You see, we were repeatedly told by all kinds of critics that this was madness, that we were destroying our culture, possibly our future. We were ruining our history, our social fabric. Well, most of it fell on deaf ears. Some people just shrugged, and others said, well, it's progress. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Tell me this, was Robert also responsible for the removal of streetcars in Paris, France?
There's this movie from the 1970s starring the late great Jean-Paul Belmondo, who plays the author of a spy novel series. Back then, such authors were a dime a dozen. Now, this guy lives in Center City, Paris, not on the outskirts. His publisher's office is also in Center City, Paris. And he drives to the office. Paris is amazingly walkable, and the metro system is wonderful.
But the protagonist chooses to be stuck in traffic. Okay, that's enough of these pastoral distractions. Let's get back to business. Envy, avarice, sloth. After us the deluge, as Madame de Pompadour famously proclaimed, all the trappings of original sin. Robert Moses offered us his vision and we bought it. Line, hook, and sinker. No, we're not poor innocent lambs in this. Oh, he swindled us. We wanted to be swindled. We wanted to feel lordly. We wanted the voiture particulier. And if our culture, history, architecture, neighborly relations were ruined in the process, so much the worse for culture, architecture, neighborly relations, social fabric, and all the rest of it. Suburbia, Robert's crowning achievement. Horseless carriages and Mac mansions connected by highways and cloverleaf interchanges.
It's Friday night, and you want to have a good time. The nearest bar is 5 miles away. The movie theater is also 5 miles away, likely in a different direction. So there's your bar or restaurant that serves wine and liquor, good wine and good liquor, mind you. And if you're out to have a good time, wine is a must. It's okay, it's good for you in moderation. It's in the Bible. The Savior himself likes a cup of wine now and then. You discover there is a parking lot next to the bar or restaurant, and it's packed with cars. Driving while intoxicated is against the law, and rightly so. Do you see the hypocrisy? This car-centric culture has given us suburbia. Soulless, faceless, depressing, and largely unsustainable. As James Howard Kunstler once put it, the greatest misallocation of resources in history. The destruction of the American small town to make room for all those subdivisions was a terrible blow to culture, tradition, neighborly relations, neighborhood life. Everyone knows it sucks. No one knows what to do with it anymore.
The carbon footprint, if you're interested in that aspect, is astronomical.
You know, driving is supposed to be a joyful experience if you do it in moderation. But you get behind the wheel, you start driving, and suddenly there's this traffic jam. It's like the entire country is an amusement park with only one ride, and that ride is malfunctioning. You want to know something funny? Robert Moses died at the age of 92. In all his eventful life, he never learned to drive. Didn't even have a driver's license. Cheers.